letter that was typed. That that 1 byte represents a particular letter that was typed on the keyboard. And so I was talking to Josh Wright about this last year, and he said, "Wow, that's great. I can't believe that nobody's done this before. We should have a tool that allows us to actually pull these keystrokes out of these captured files." And he said, "Tell you what, you send me some captures, and I'll write the tool." And I said, "Are you kidding me? Of course I'll send you some captures." And thus BTapTap was born. With this tool, all you do is just point it at a PCAP file, which is the file that's produced by GR Bluetooth and what we're dissecting in Wireshark, and it just pulls the keystrokes out. And this is also in the GR Bluetooth tree. So realize that this particular situation, we're in boot mode. Now, not all dongles and keyboards are going to end up communicating in the clear in boot mode, but many do. How do you test that? How do you know whether your keyboard's actually using encryption or not? And I'll be talking about that later. But one way you can do with the more expensive hardware is to use the GR Bluetooth, just like I just shown. But I'm going to show how to use off-the-shelf dongles to learn the same kind of thing. So be careful of boot mode. Boot mode is not going to behave the same way as normal HCI mode. You're losing your control that your host operating system has over your Bluetooth device by operating in boot mode. You might be able to avoid boot mode entirely. Like if you replace your dongle with a regular dongle that doesn't have a connect button, it probably won't support boot mode. And your keyboard will only work when your host operating system is booted up. That might work for you in some situations. Although I warn you, more and more Bluetooth host adapters, including some that ship internally in laptops, actually default to boot mode. So they start out, even if you never configure them or never install any Bluetooth software, you might have a laptop that is just waiting for a keyboard to connect to it at any time. So look out for those. One of the things that we could do if we have just plain off-the-shelf dongles and HCI layer tools is to try connecting to a device directly. That means connecting to the keyboard. And you can initiate a connection to that keyboard if you have its address. You can initiate a connection to the keyboard while spoofing the host's address if you also have the host address. And if you also have a third thing, the link key that's shared between the host and the device, then you can really do a good job of spoofing even the authentication and participate in authentication and encryption with that keyboard, just like you're the legitimate host. So those are sort of three things that might be nice to find. And we can initiate an active connection to a keyboard, or we can just listen. We can just set things up so that we're pretending to be the host and waiting for the keyboard to come talk to us. In most situations, I like to initiate an outgoing connection. It gives you more control over what's going on. But there are situations where a keyboard might be more inclined to talk to you. And it isn't always clear which is the keyboard is expecting. We can do the exact same things connecting to a host, potentially pretending to be the device, pretending to be the keyboard. And just that was done some years ago by Colin Mulliner. Some of you may have seen his hit attack and this XKBD BTHID, which is a little on-screen keyboard that he wrote for his little mobile device so that he could pretend to be a Bluetooth keyboard and control other things. And he was interested in finding stacks, host operating systems that had a vulnerability where they're just waiting for a keyboard to connect. And I believe those, other than boot mode dongles, I believe those holes have all been closed to my knowledge, but I don't know if anyone's done a real comprehensive survey. But these tools can also be used to spoof a real device. And I'm going to show you a quick little demo. In this case, I'm not using. I'm going to switch my projector here over to my victim machine, And what I'm going to use is a little tool that is similar to HID attack, hit attack. I'm going to plug in this dongle into this Mac because I'm going to really be attacking the dongle. And the dongle's from vendor A. I'm going to use a mouse from vendor B. Interoperability tends to be very good with these devices. Hey, there we go. We're already connected. And I can bring up this document with my mouse. But these devices tend to, they have power switches. Sometimes they get switched off. Or sometimes, in the case of a keyboard, it's pretty typical. If somebody has a keyboard on a desktop, it's pretty typical that they never turn their keyboard off, but they occasionally turn their computer off, right? So there are often these windows of opportunity where, I've been using my Bluetooth mouse and I turn it off, but I still have a host sitting there waiting to reconnect to it. So I'm just going to run a little attack. I need another dongle to do this. And I'm just going to use a plain dongle and see if I can pretend to be the mouse and spoof some input events into the victim system over there. And so I'm reconfiguring oh, here we go. Hey. Okay. So I was, it turns out that you can not only spoof input events into when you're pretending to be a mouse, but you can even spoof keyboard events, okay? Because they're just HID reports, right? And it may be that a host operating system stack filters things out and is smart enough to know that keystrokes shouldn't come from a mouse. But but that's not necessarily the case. And in the case of this dongle, which is in boot mode, it's actually enumerated already to the host as a USB mouse and a USB keyboard. So the host thought there was a keyboard attached all along, right? So what I'm really attacking here is the dongle and its inability to know that keystrokes shouldn't come from a mouse. Note that I'm doing this with knowledge of both the host and device addresses, but not with any knowledge of a link key. Remember that mice aren't even required to support encryption by the Bluetooth HID profile specification. Actually, hosts aren't required to support encryption either, which seems a little silly. But every host that I've seen does support encryption. So I'm going to pop back over to my other machine here for the duration. Yay! It worked. Okay. So once again, beware the boot mode, and also. If you're interested in using these kinds of devices in the most secure manner you can, it's a good idea to check and make sure that your devices actually authenticate each other. They can. They maybe should, but the profile doesn't actually say they absolutely must. So there's nothing broken about this particular mouse and dongle. They're following the HID specification. It's just kind of loose on this point. It allows these devices to create a link key or not. It allows them to use that link key to authenticate each other or not. And there really isn't any way to tell whether your device is getting authenticated unless you do some of these tests. So how do you get the device address that you need in order to try one of these attacks? One easy way is physical inspection. If you can find that sticker, you're golden. Another way is passive monitoring using GR Bluetooth. Another way is inquiry. And inquiry is the process of finding discoverable devices. So if you just go to any Bluetooth device, like my phone, and I go to the Bluetooth menu and I say, like, find nearby devices, what I'm doing is an inquiry. The HCI tool inc command allows you to do an inquiry from the command line. Another way to get addresses is by inspecting the operating system of the host computer. Mike Kershaw has recently released a Kismet BT-Scan plugin, which is a plugin that does inquiry from within Kismet. So all you need is a plain, cheap dongle, plug it into your laptop, run Kismet with the BTScan plugin, which is included in the most recent release of Kismet, and it finds discoverable Bluetooth devices. So this is kind of a convenient tool. And we had tools that did inquiries before, but this one is integrated with Kismet and integrated with all the GPS tracking and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's a really handy tool. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have used the word scan on this slide because the Bluetooth specification uses the term inquiry scan to mean listening for inquiries, not sending inquiries. But it is sending inquiries to locate devices and get their addresses and names and classes. Also, I've been working on, with Mike's help, the Kismet Bluetooth plugin, which is a second plugin for Kismet that is for integration with GR Bluetooth and the USRP. So I'm going to do a real quick demo of that. This does passive monitoring, so you don't need to know any prior knowledge about a device at all, and it doesn't need to be in discoverable mode in order for you to find it. Let me see if this works. This will be the very first field test of the Kismet Bluetooth plugin. Aren't you excited, Mike? Let's see. It probably won't work the first time, and I don't really know why. Okay, the USRP is on. That's good. Hey, there we go. Okay, so you can see I've got 3 different PicoNets being monitored here already. One of them I've heard of. So whoever else is running Bluetooth in the room, I don't know, let's see if we can point the antenna around. Can we get anybody? No? Anyone? Oh, there are a couple. Okay, cool. Okay, so that's our first field test of the Kismet Bluetooth plugin. It's very crude. All it does, hey! All it does is count up packets that it's seen from these different addresses. And if you saw my talk last year, you know there are ways to improve on this and fill in the upper half of the device addresses. But really all you need is that lower half in order to initiate some communications with these devices. So let me kill this since it's sucking up 100% of my CPU. And I have a little USRP overrun problem to deal with. So those are some ways that you can use to get these device addresses. And if you're a defender and you are trying to assess your own devices, then it's really easy to get these addresses because you can just inspect them or put them into discovery mode and do an inquiry, and you're good. How do you get a link key is a little bit harder. But again, if you're a defender, you have the advantage because you can just go into an operating system and wherever that OS stores its link keys, like the BlueZ stack stores them in their varlib Bluetooth, and Mac OS stores them in the whatever you call those profiles. If you do a defaults command, you can list out your link keys. And so for some, I think my next demo, I'm going to actually be using a link key that I've extracted from a host computer using that technique to test something. But an attacker can potentially get a link key using passive monitoring and cracking a pairing, for example, to determine a link key. And that's a well-known attack that's been around for a while. It's a little hard to execute in practice, but it can be done. And I've done it with the USRP. So it's something that you should probably consider that an attacker would be able to do. Well, if you can connect to a device and pretend to be a host, and if you can connect to a host and pretend to be a device, then the natural thing to try is a man in the middle, right? So I put together this little tool called BT-HID proxy. And this is using plain off-the-shelf dongles and the BlueZ stack on Linux. And what it does is it configures one dongle to act like